the equation E is equal mc squared, in which energy is put equal to mass multiplied with the square of the velocity of light, showed that very small amount of mass may be converted into a very large amount of energy, and vice versa. The mass and energy were in fact equivalent, according to the formula mentioned above. This was demonstrated by Kruger and Walton in 1932 experimentally.
You've got it right here. S4 with E squared in conjunction with Spaced Out Radio.
Alien contact. S4. UFOs. Bigfoot. 9/11. Grays. The Illuminati. Cover-ups. RH negative blood. What are they hiding from you?
Sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed.
Now, the men behind the mics, Forest Moon Paranormal's Eric Cooper and the SOR Spacewire's Eric Markham. You can find more at spacedoutradio.com.
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
Now, let's travel into the universe. It's S4 with E squared.
Hey, all right. Yeah, it is live, Barrier. Thank you for everyone for coming in. Yeah, it is late. I'm doing this at midnight. We're usually a Sunday night show. And, wow, I think we have a fuller chat room right now than we usually do on Sunday nights. That's amazing. So I have to put out the disclaimer real quick. The opinions and views of S4 E squared actually does not reflect the opinions of Spaced Out Radio. We are under their umbrella. I have to work around 2 kids, and S4 will never conflict time-wise with Spaced Out Radio or with Darkness Rising Radio. And yes, we are live. We're live right now. And if we take 2 hours, we take 2 hours. If we take 3, hopefully it won't take 3. But in light of some attitudes and views and whatnot that you hear, I felt the need, and actually we kind of touched on this Sunday night with pagans in the military, and we're going to hit pagans in the military. What is a pagan? I've been a practicing witch for over 20 years, and so real quick, let's define what a pagan is. As far as Forest Moon Grove and Paranormal go by, a pagan is an umbrella term for many different belief systems. There you go, Dark Moon Rising Radio. Thank you, Corey. And by definition of what we consider a pagan, it's anyone that follows a polytheistic, earth-based belief system. With the exception, you have some Wiccans that follow monotheistic, and they follow the goddess only. Now, primarily pagans follow a god and a goddess because we believe in balance. the masculine, the feminine. There's got to be a balance in there. Good and evil. There's always a balance. Is there a good witch? No, there's no such thing as a good witch or a bad witch. It's all about intention. Um, and we're gonna. I've got a list of questions that actually Robert Rose gave me. And I I have to look at them. But real quick, the common questions I get asked are we devil worshippers? No, most pagans don't believe in the Christian version of devil. The closest deity you've got, and I say deity, yes, the closest deity you've got in the pagan realm would be Pan, and he is a Greek god. He has cloven hooves, goat legs, goat horns, human head, and he is a Greek deity. And Pan has been around longer than well, paganism in general has been, you could say, is one of the original belief systems in the history of civilization. And good to see you made it, Finn. Good to see you made it. And gnomes can come in here tripping. That's fine. But you know, when it comes to demons, let's talk about that for a second. We believe in malevolent entities by any means, and it's really a basis of a name or a label. Demons. I saw someone made a comment in the sword chat room earlier that the Norse and the Greeks believe in demons. I'd have to do some research and clarify that. Most pagan beliefs, the concept of a demon, with the exception of the jinn in Muslim belief or Islamic belief, they believe they have the jinn, which the jinn actually makes the Christian version of the demon look like a kindergartner. And so when it comes to demons, we don't believe in demons. We don't recognize demons. We recognize malevolent entities. Now, malevolent entities, yes, they can attach themselves. Yes, they can possess humans. It happens very, very seldom. And so, yeah, I get attacked by some of the various people out there that I'm closed-minded and I'm ignorant and I'm intolerant. You don't know the meaning of intolerance. Seriously. um, when you have a religious belief and your morals based on your religious belief step on other belief systems, that's an issue. And that does not have anything to do with intolerance. Um, you see a lot of that in politics today. And so, yeah, I have to bite my tongue a whole lot when I'm listening to some of the guests in Spaced Out Radio. I just do. I don't want to. I love Dave to death. He's great. He's awesome. Uh, I love the guests he's got on there. They're great. They're awesome. But yeah. So, do we do blood sacrifice? That's the other question I get asked. I've gotten asked that by Army chaplains. No, we do not. Now, when it comes to blood, blood is energy, and you'll have some witches that'll actually use blood in their energy work, and that puts your personal energy into whatever spell, whatever ritual you're doing, and that's it. You do a pinprick on your finger, and that's the blood you use. We don't believe in sacrifice. Now, some of the druids back in, I don't know, the 1600s, back in the beginning of time, the druids did do sacrifice. But you got to understand, back in that time period, the sacrifices, they didn't go running off down the street grabbing the first blonde they saw. Um, their sacrifices were born and raised and knew throughout their entire life period that they were created to be a sacrifice. And it was an honor to them. They weren't trying to get away, they weren't trying to hide. They knew they were being sacrificed to their deities. And it was an honor. And they were sacrificed. That was the extent of human sacrifice, animal sacrifice. What you see today with sacrifices are very, to me, very confused individuals. And no, exactly, Trip. And we don't, that's the other thing. Okay, for example, my primary deity is Morrigan. She is the Celtic goddess of war, death, and rebirth. Do I worship her? No, I do not. I respect her, and I work with her. I don't have to bow down. I don't have to sit there and kiss her feet. I don't, no. Is she going to smite me because I have another altar for somebody else? No, she's not. Um, most deities, with the exception of the Christian deities, well, deity, um, aren't arrogant. They are not egotistical. They are not going to punish you. Um, so, no. Uh, I'm not here to religion bash anybody. It might sound like I am, but I get tired of arrogance. I get tired of arrogance, and I get tired of hypocritical bigots. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing the show tonight. Because I'm sick of it. I'm sick of attitudes, and wanted to clear the air and rant. That's what it boils down to. We run a very large organization. We work with the homeless. We work with military pagans. Having been in the army for 20 years, and as a pagan, Wicca was established in the 1940s. It's the youngest pagan belief system out of the umbrella. You might have an occasional new one pop up today, but overall, Wicca is the youngest. It started with Gerald Gardner. He was in a coven in England, and I believe he learned from Aleister Crowley and a couple other coven traditions, and he brought it to America. And it was started in the 1940s. You've got some Wiccans out there that try to say it started long before that, and they started the Wiccan Rede. And the Wiccan Rede essentially states the same thing as the Golden Rule in the Bible: lest ye harm none, do as you will. Okay, so I've been attacked by Wiccans for being military. How can I be a pagan and in the military when I'm harming people? Well, if you look at every religious, um, right? Yeah, you and I get along fine, Finn. Uh, yeah. Now, I've actually had Wiccans ask me, how can I be military and be a pagan? Well, it's real easy. Every society and every belief system in society has always had a warrior sect. And, well, pagans are no different. There's a lot of pagans. Look at the Asatru, the Vikings. Look at the more Norse traditions. Were very warrior-like. And honestly, when it means harm none, it means don't do magic against another witch. That's what it boils down to. Because basically, you're performing magic against yourself. It's the same energy. We all use the same energy. And let's talk about spells for a second, because all spell work is a manipulation of energy to create your own will. Does it work? Damn straight it works. Do I do spells? If I need to. I think the last spell I did, well, I don't know, was months ago, because I don't have a need to. Do we do love spells? Yeah, some people do, some people don't. I really don't believe in inflicting my will upon somebody by manipulating energy to do it. There's just no need to. So, getting back to the umbrella, like I said, it's earth-based, polytheistic, with the exception of some Wiccans that are monotheistic, because they only follow a goddess, and it's usually Diana. Now, in the Wiccan belief, also, all deities are one energy. There is no individual personality with deities. I don't agree with that either. And exactly. Finn's got it right. If you have any questions, and Finn, if you can think of any beginner questions for me to answer on the show here, by all means, post them, because I'm not going to think of them all. And then once I close the show out, I'll be kicking myself, going, "Damn it! Why didn't I ask that one?" So anytime I get a beginner that wants to learn what pagans are, and that's the other thing, pagans are never proselytizing. If you're not pagan, I don't want you to be pagan. It's kind of a personal thing, but it's also a pagan belief that we do not proselytize. We do not want everybody to be a pagan. Um, and most people, they start off with a mainstream belief system, and they find that pagans are actually they're more attuned to the earth. We'll just say. And okay, I think I'm still here. There we go. Yeah, my computer tried to hibernate. Anyway, so there's more and more people that are getting sick of the mainstream beliefs and they're turning to paganism because it just feels right. And that, I guess that's the easiest way for a lot of people to find it. And they find Forest Moon. Now, Forest Moon Paranormal is my paranormal group. We're 5,000 plus strong now. Forest Moon Grove now is our headquarters group. And there's going to be a lot of changes this year that I'm not going to go into right now until they start happening. Um, now, being pagan and having a paranormal group, that should be a no-brainer. Because as pagans, we live paranormal. We know spirits exist. Um, aliens, maybe not so much, but again, my background, I've been in the UFO and alien abduction side of it for over 20 years as well. And so I know they exist. But with pagans, spirits, fairies, things of those realms, we deal with on a daily basis sometimes. So we don't have to question whether or not they're there. Do we know they're malevolent entities? Yeah, hell yeah. By all means. And yes, we use sage. Now, are Native Americans pagan? I don't call them pagan. I call them Native American. They have their own belief. Now, it parallels our beliefs by hands down. Um, so let's see. I'm trying to think. I'm brainstorming here as far as some of the questions go. And I'm going to pull up Robert Rose's questions and I'm going to answer them as we go. So, uh, and as I was saying in the chat room earlier, it's basically anyone can remove a malevolent entity. It's all about your personal belief and it's all about your intent and how much your belief, how much you believe. So do you have to call on Jesus' name? No. I can call on Morgon's name. Um, an Odinist can call on Odin. For example, Luciferian can call on Lucifer. It's all about how much you believe and how much faith you have in your words. You don't have to be a Christian to remove entities, to clear a room, to clear a house, to help a client in crisis. You just don't. There is no right or wrong belief system. It's all energy and it's all goes to the same place. So, pentacle versus pentagram. Why are they confused? And I'm looking at Robert's questions. So, a pentacle is basically a pentagram. It's got a circle around it. The pentacle is the symbol of the 5 elements. There's earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. The circle is a symbol of protection that ties all the elements together. That's the difference between a pentacle and a pentagram. Now, the pentagram, the point is straight up. In Satanists and Luciferians, and you can clarify this for me, Finn, it's an inverted pentagram, what they call the symbol of Baphomet. So that would be. Now, to get a little more technical here, I know this is a beginner. Yeah, and we'll talk about Sage here in a minute. Just remind me, Trippin'. And I don't know how long y'all can stay on tonight. I'm just going to keep on talking. And we haven't even hit the military side of it yet. And you know what? I'm not going to say any names, but when I get called intolerant because I don't believe in demons, and yeah, she doesn't, that individual does not know what intolerance is. I know pagans that have lost their jobs for being pagan, and that was by a military dental clinic. I've known Wiccan soldiers that have had stones thrown at them in Iraq for practicing a ritual that had nothing to do with anybody, but they were Christian soldiers that mocked this individual, and this this Wiccan soldier had to go to the hospital because they basically stoned him. I know a soldier that died in Baghdad. I wasn't in Baghdad personally. I was in Talifa. But there's a soldier that was involved in a firefight. And the chaplain saw that he had Pagan on his dog tags and stepped over him and went to the next soldier that had Christian on their dog tags. Now, in the military, they have what's used to be a DFGL, Distinguished Faith Group Leader, and now it's the RGL, a Distinguished Religious Group Leader. So what we do in Forest Moon, because we don't have a pagan chaplain in the military, we've been close to getting one, and then all of a sudden the regulations change or whatever the case is, and well, we don't get a pagan chaplain. And I know Satanism has been recognized in the military since the 1960s. Wicca, for example, wasn't recognized until 1998, 1995, something around there. And that's when George Bush came out and encouraged the military to stop recognizing witchcraft as a belief. And a Representative Bob Barr was all over the news saying that Wicca was not a religious belief and should not be recognized in the military. So, you want to talk intolerance? We have witches that are being burned and sacrificed in Africa. Okay, it's not America. I understand that. But I'm talking globally, global intolerance. We were recognized and treated better by Muslims in Iraq for being pagan than we were by our own troops. Um, and I could write a book. Robert Rose was and I were chatting last night, and that's kind of what sparked this show tonight. I wrote for a pagan magazine my entire tour in Iraq in 0506. And you read the articles I wrote, you will get pissed off. Just point blank. I had a pagan spot. My first sergeant gave me a tent. I'm an E5 at that point in time. And so I was given a tent because I was a combat medic and a truck mechanic. I held both MOSs. And so I set up an aid station, kind of like for a Red Cross station for soldiers to come to for a sick call, that kind of thing. I'm trying to keep this civilian language, not military. But I set up the backside of this tent, kind of as our pagan meeting place. And they didn't have a problem with that. But other than the captain, our commander was Mormon, and the first sergeant was Catholic. Interesting mix there. And up until he didn't want the captain to find out that we were pagan. Basically, is what it boiled down to. And so we met for about 3 months. I went back to the States on R&R for my 2-week leave. And I came back, and the tent was gone. I asked my staff sergeant, I was like, so what the hell? Where's my tent? Well, your motor sergeant he wanted your tent for an office. So the first sergeant said, you guys didn't need it anymore, so we gave it to the motor sergeant. And your altar and all your pagan stuff we packed up very respectfully, and we packed it all up, and it's in the Connex. So, yeah. Now, if you're a Christian, you've got a chapel to go to. If you're a Catholic, again, you've got a chapel to go to. They even have Muslim chaplains in the military now. and Buddhist. We actually had a Buddhist that came to our pagan meetings when we were in Blad in 0405. So I've got 30 soldiers at this point in time. When I first started having pagan meetings, we were originally going to do it once a week. But, oh, dude, you don't even know. You don't. Go in the Forest Moon Grove group. I'll approve your membership. And go in the file section, and you can actually find my articles that I wrote while I was there. Because I'm not even going to get into half the stuff that happened to us for being right. And what Finn is saying is that he'd be seeing red because anyone touches their altar. Yeah, that's one thing you don't do. You don't touch an altar. That's disrespectful. You don't ask to see somebody's stones. That's disrespectful. Unless we allow you to, and that's fine. Um, so I've got 30 soldiers at this point in time, and well, I've got two groups. One's Forest Moon Grove. It's the headquarters group. Forest Moon Paranormal is the paranormal side. Yeah, I usually send the pagans straight over to Forest Moon Grove as well, because it's all pagan material in there, whereas the paranormal side is all paranormal. I keep them separated as much as I can. Yeah, there is, to my knowledge, there is chic. Um, so at this point in time, I've got 30 soldiers because I actually had soldiers, and I wish Don was in here tonight. I still keep in touch with a lot of them, and he would go out on missions for like a week at a time. He had a good unit because as soon as he came back to Talofa, they'd say, "Go see your pagan group," and he was straight over to Machu, which is a civilian housing unit, I believe is what CHU stands for. But yeah, we actually met in Machu every night because I'm not going to turn my soldiers away. That's not what an NCO does, especially as a pagan NCO with pagan troops. And we would sit and we drink. Tolly's Coffee actually donated 20 pounds of coffee beans to our group. And so we had a bean grinder, and we actually made fresh coffee every night in our rack for the entire year. As I was running out of coffee, I emailed Tolly's, and they sent another 10-pound bag. They're like, "Is that enough?" So I mean, Starbucks? Hell no. No, we only donate our coffee to schools. Like a school needs, Starbucks. But yeah, I didn't even ask anymore. Tully's had no problem donating to our group. But we met every night. And the first sergeant came out after he realized that we moved to my chew. And he's like, "Sergeant Cooper, you can't meet in your chew anymore." Like, well, actually, I can, and we will. No disrespect intended. If you have to take my rank, go ahead and take my rank. But I'm not going to turn my soldiers away because you don't want to respect our belief system. And well, he had nothing to say because my own battalion chaplain, who was in Mosul, um, actually liked the pagan belief. He actually got away from Christianity and switched over to Catholic because he said Catholic was the closest to a Christian belief system that used incense and herbs and ritual like we do. I was like, well, damn. He's like, well, I don't want to lose my chaplain status if I switch. And we'll get to that because it actually happened to a Christian chaplain that, and we'll just go there right now. There was a Christian chaplain that wanted to be the first Wiccan chaplain in the military. And, well, once they found out that he was going to switch from Christianity to Wiccan, not only did his endorsement agent, who was a Christian seminary, drop him, but they kicked him out of the army because then he wasn't a chaplain anymore. So instead of letting him maintain his theology and be the first Wiccan chaplain, he was kicked out of the army as a captain. because, well, he lost his endorsement agency, which was a Christian organization. So then he didn't have an endorsement agent. And when Sacred Well Church, which is a Wiccan church, stepped up and said they would endorse him, and they were fully federally recognized, the whole 9 yards, the Army changed their policy and said, well, we're sorry, but you guys don't qualify. So now you've got an Army officer, chaplain, that got kicked out of the Army because he wanted to be the first Wiccan chaplain. That's the kind of fight that we go through. And they want to call us intolerant? Really? So, when it was all said and done, my battalion chaplain actually went to the colonel and the sergeant major and said, if you guys don't stop persecuting and harassing your pagan soldiers that are in Chalafa, I will take this battalion to the IG. They stopped. And, but, you know, it shouldn't take a threat from a chaplain to make them stop. And, you know, I got harassed every which way they could after the fact. Um, you know, and you you can't say it's based on beliefs because, well, you can't prove it. But you know what's happening. When I was in Germany, I had Wiccan soldiers coming to my house, and it was just before Easter. And I got called the day before Easter Sunday and was told, well, you're pagan, you don't recognize Easter anyway, so we're going to have you do 24-hour duty because, well, Sergeant so-and-so wants to go to church, and he wants to be with his family on Easter. You know, ordinarily I wouldn't have a problem with that because I can respect that. You don't call me the night before because you figure I'm pagan and I won't have a problem. You know, that ain't the way to do shit. So that's how pagans in the military get treated. Is it any better? You know, they actually had a spiritual fitness test in the Army for a while because they felt, and it was a sociological experiment at one point in time, they felt that if you didn't have any kind of belief, if you weren't Christian basically, you had a high suicide rate, and you were spiritually unfit, and they could kick you out of the Army. When that was brought up, and what we use for legal issues is the MRFF. That's the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. You can find them at mrff.org. And Mikey Weinstein runs the MRFF. The military hates him because, well, face it, he has a very large legal team. He's Jewish himself. And about 80% of his clientele are actually Christians. And Christians who understand that they aren't the only belief system out there, and that what they do steps on other people's beliefs. So when it comes to a Bible on a display, or you know, God bless you on a base welcome sign, or you know, something that kind of might have a tendency of infringing on somebody else's beliefs, the MRFF steps up. And I've actually had to call on them a couple times over pagan issues. So Mikey Weinstein is very familiar with the work of Horseman Grove. So we've answered the pinnacle question. Let's see what else did Robert. In paganism, there is a sense of balance, male, female. From a Muslim point of view, he is asking, are there any pagans that believe in one God that is neither male nor female? Islam does not profess that God, Allah, is either. You know, and that, again, because I know he's going to listen later, and he's not feeling good tonight, so he couldn't stay for the show. I'm not for sure certain whether there is a asexual deity. I think that's what you call them. I wouldn't use hermaphrodite, but yeah, there is balance indeed. But again, as I said in the beginning, there's also there are goddess worshippers, there are god worshippers, and there's a balance with most of them with a god and a goddess. Now, I mentioned Morrigan. I also follow Cernunnos. He's the Celtic god of the forest, of the hunt. Some would call him the Green Man. He's the god of the harvest. Um, so what pagans do, we don't meet every Sunday like most religious beliefs out there meet on Saturdays or they meet on Sundays. Um, we meet. It's basically called the Wheel of the Year. And depending on what your particular tradition is, because there's many traditions out there, some meet on other days, but most of them you got Candlemas. We'll start from the beginning. The first Wheel of the Year Sabbath would be what we call Samhain, and that's Halloween. And it depends on your outlook, because actually Samhain, by Wiccan tradition and by many other traditions as well, you've got 3 harvest Sabbaths in the year. The first one being Lammas, and that's August 1st. August 1st or 2nd. Lammas is actually the wheat or the maize harvest. And I went over this in the Halloween show, but we're going to go over the entire Wheel of the Year. Basically, and there's pictures in Forest Moon Grove. We actually honored every Sabbath. In Iraq, you'll see our Mayday pole, our Beltane pole. That is a fertility rite for spring. But in August, we have Lammas, and that's when we honor the harvest deities. We thank them for a good harvest. Now, and I'm basically going to repeat myself from the Halloween show, in that back in the Celtic days, they were preparing for the darkness, the dark of the year, and that would be in October, November, December, January, February, when it's still dark. Now, Yule time is when the sun starts coming out longer, and that's when the god is reborn. I'm jumping ahead. So September, you have Mabon. Mabon is September 21st, 22nd time area, and that is your vegetables. Your garden's getting harvested, basically. So you're thanking your deities at that point in time for the fruits of the labor, the work you put into your harvest. You're getting ready for the darkness, the winter season. And if they didn't prepare for the winter season, in Ireland especially, they wouldn't make it. So then you come up to Samhain. Well, the god dies at Samhain. It's also what we call the blood or the meat harvest. That's when they kill the livestock that they've been raising up for the meat of the winter. And again, Samhain also has meaning for honoring your deceased, your deceased friends and loved ones from the year. It's good for divination. It's when you scry, or you do tarot, or you do Ouija board. Basically, it's when the veil is supposed to be thinnest, and so you can actually communicate with the deceased much easier. So then you get to Yule. Yule time is December 21st, and that's when we burn the Yule log, encouraging the sun to come up and stay up longer. It's also when the Oak King and the Hollow King fight, and the Winter King is killed off, and the sun will start coming out. Exactly, Trippin. Exactly. Trippin saying pretty much the items that are harvested before freeze gets to them. Yeah. And these are festivals or Sabbats that are created to thank the deities, in particular the harvest deities, for. Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Finn. You've got the Mexican Day of the Dead, which is November 1st time frame, I believe. You've got multiple Day of the Dead cultures. Everyone understands that. So, yeah, basically, all the harvest Sabbats are there to honor the deities that assisted with growing your crops. So, come Yule time, um, and I'm not going to get into Santa Claus and all that. My family personally, we celebrate Christmas as well as Yule because we want our kids to experience all beliefs. We're raising them pagan. Now they also go to Sunday school with grandma, so I mean they have a good view of which path they want to follow. Nothing is pushed on them. Me personally, I was raised Assembly of God. I went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night. I went to Christian school my entire life. I went to church Wednesday night. I went to Junior Swaggart Bible College in 88, 89 for one semester. But you can even ask my mom. I never fit into it. She was praying heaven down that I would. And, well, no. I would come home from church. I'd put my play clothes on. I'd be out in the woods grounding and following the animals around. I was not meant to be Christian, and I wasn't. Once I hit the age of 18, 19, I started getting all the occult books I could and started studying. And for anyone that's interested in reading more, I always encourage people to pick up Scott Cunningham. He's got Scott Cunningham has Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner and Living Wicca. That's an excellent 2-book set for anyone that wants to learn about paganism. Don't let the name fool you, because the nuts and bolts of Wicca are the nuts and bolts for every pagan tradition. And so, yeah, and it's funny, but it's not funny. I was in Iraq, and my stepdaughter didn't want to go to church, and her mom were living at my parents' house while I was in Iraq, and she didn't want to go to church. So she said, "I don't see why I need to go to church. My dad is a pagan high priest," and I guess you about could see the blood drain out of my parents' face, but I didn't want them to find out that way, but they weren't surprised either. So we had a long talk when I got back from Iraq at the age of what 38, 39 at that point in time, and so let's see. We've gotten into okay the wheel of the year. Okay, after Yule we have Candlemas. Candlemas is in I want to say January, February. I'm not googling in front of me. I don't have my books in front of me, and so I'm winging it here. But Candlemas is you're basically the Celts were getting towards the end of their supplies. They're hoping for a little bit more sunlight. They're hoping the spring is right around the corner, and so Candlemas is a candle celebration. A lot of candle lighting, a lot of bonfires. Being stationed in Germany was really cool as hell because we actually saw the farm. The farmers were out at every pagan Sabbath. They were lighting bonfires, and yeah. And Trippin said never really got into religion. His dad took him to nature as much as he could. And completely agree. And like I said, I lived on a 40-acre beef farm in the mountains, and that's where I was raised. So I had nothing but mountains around me, and that was my sanctuary. I went to church, but I didn't particularly care for church. It wasn't my following. Now, after Candlemas comes Beltane. I'm tracking the wheel in my mind. But yeah, comes Beltane, and that's in no, I'm backwards here. Ostara comes in there. Um, Ostara. I'm not going to go into all the history of it. We're not delving deep. I'm just giving you kind of the names and what their meanings are, so you can do your own research, as we do here on S4. Well, but there comes Ostara, and that's the spring equinox, and that's in March. So you go from Ostara to Beltane. Now, Beltane is a fertility rite, and that happens in May, also known as May Day. And some of these you're going to probably recognize from being a child in school. Because when I went to school, Christian school at that, for May Day, we all made a basket, and we put flowers in the basket. And we went and knocked on our neighbors' doors, and we left this basket of flowers on the doors and ran away. Well, yeah, again, pagan traditions, honoring spring. Then you got midsummer. Midsummer is June 18th, generally speaking. It's also another day where you the veil's thin. So there's a lot of fairy magic. That's actually what many traditions consider a a fairy Sabbath, because there's a lot of fairy work that goes into it. Again, the veil is thin, um, but again, it's recognized more for fairies than it is for spirits per se. And that's midsummer, and that completes the wheel of the year. I don't think I forgot any. Um, Pagans also recognize the full moon. The full moon, the new moon, the dark of the moon, all have different meanings and different practices. The dark of the moon is when you relinquish bad habits. The full moon is when you charge your instruments. And we'll get into instruments in a minute. You'll find pagans use candles for everything. We use bells. We use the symbols of the elements, which obviously dirt for earth. There's also different color symbology on candles that you can use for the elements. Obviously, green can be earth. You have blue for water, or you can use a bowl of water for water. Yellow is symbolic for air, which a lot of pagans will use incense and censers for air, and they can also use it for fire. Spirit is generally symbolized by white or silver. Fire, usually a candle or the color red. Now, with spell work, again, like I said before, color means everything. You use color for symbols of many different things. You also use stones. I use rose quartz for nightmares. I use hematite for grounding. Lapis lazuli is a good royalty stone, symbolic of any deity. Um, and again, I'm just talking. I'm not. I'm just winging it. You got moonstone, which is symbolic of lunar energy or lunar deities. Bloodstone, which is one of my favorites because it's Morrigan stone, is also used for healing. You've got stone, red jasper, tiger's eye are used for protection. So there's a lot that goes into everything we do. Now I'm going to use a prosperity spell for an easy example. For a prosperity spell, and everything you can do with your mind anyway. All the tools are simply focal points for focusing your energy. So if I want to do a prosperity spell, for example, I've got a bill that just needs to get paid. I'm going to take a green candle. Because green means, money. Money is green. I'm going to take, and I'm answering Finn here again. Finn never got into stones personally. Too many different sources saying too many different things about what they do, and agreed. But I'll take different sources and I'll ask the stone. I mean, just to be honest with you, the stone will tell you what it's used for. And if it works, you'll know it's right. If it doesn't work, try something else. It's, there's no right or wrong way. Um, oh no, you're fine. Actually, if you have questions or comments, by all means, bring them up. Again, Scott Cunningham I found to be the best source for all of his encyclopedias and whatnot as far as book sources go. um, anyway, bloodstone is your red and green stone. It's green. It's got red flecking in it, and it looks like blood splatter. It's also used for blood healing. If you have you're anemic, or if you have some kind of a blood illness, then bloodstone's always been used as well as for protection. Now, when you go to herbs, going back to the same prosperity spell, you have what's called dressing. You'll take an herbal oil and you'll basically bless the candle you're using for that particular spell or ritual. And with a prosperity spell, personally, I'm going to use peppermint oil because peppermint is symbolic of money or prosperity. So I would dress my green candle with prosperity oil. Then I'm going to take my bill or put money underneath it, whichever. If you have a bill that you want to get paid, you put it underneath the candle and put the candle in a candle holder so nothing catches fire. Then you sit and meditate on your bill getting paid while this candle is burning. I'll get to that here in a second, Finn. Sigil work. Well, yeah, I'll get to it now. Sigil work I've never really never completely did. I mean, we've got our own symbols that we use, and our own symbols that mean different things. I think we're more drawn towards runic, to be honest with you. And so yeah, I prefer mental projection, to be honest with you, when it comes to ritual and enacting a spell. The more you put into it, obviously, such as sigils, the stronger it is. Exactly. But in the the more energy and the more work you put into something, obviously, always the more energy is enacted to make it happen. Again, all a spell is energy used to enact your will. And so, peppermint oil dressed on a green candle, placed on top, and you never blow a candle out because basically you're blowing your energy away. I always lick my fingers and I'll put if I'm going, you have what's called a 9-day spell that some people do, and it's basically a candle with 9 knots on it. They'll burn the first knot down one day. They'll put the candle out. They'll start it back up exactly the same time the next day, burn that knot out, and then it progresses. You'll do it for 9 days. There's many different spells. I think my favorite spell book out there is the Book of 5,000 Spells, and it's in the Element Encyclopedia set. So let's see here. So each religion has their limits or transgressions. Muslims don't eat pork, no meat on Fridays for Catholics, etc. What are some things that would make someone considered to be an apostate of paganism? I got to think about that one for a second, because let's see. Help me out here, Finn. Do we have anything we don't do? Well, it depends on your tradition again. Some don't believe in hunting. I do. I also believe in not sport hunting. I believe in hunting for food for my family. And I believe if the animal is meant to go in my freezer, it will step out. I don't basically my form of hunting is walking down a logging road with my weapon, and if it steps out and it's legal to shoot, um, it'll go in my freezer. That's my form of hunting. Um, and again, you've got some out there that don't believe in hunting because it harms nature or it harms animals. Um, I don't believe in harming the earth, obviously, because pagans are stewards or protectors of the earth. That's what we are. That's what we do. um, and glad tripping. My purpose here is to dispel the bullshit that's out there that's being said about what we are and what we are not. And let's talk about witches for a second. I'm a witch. There is no bad or good witch. Again, like I said in the beginning, it's all about your intention. Because you have some people out there that, oh, a witch put a spell on my house and his spirit came out. And, well, really? I don't buy it. I believe there's occultists out there that give everyone a bad name, that are very confused individuals. You've got chaos theorists. Okay, I can get on board with chaos theories. There's got to be there's got to be chaos for balance. There just does. And you know, yeah, and like Finn just said, it's hard to be an apostate for an entire umbrella or belief. There are many different individual beliefs under the pagan umbrella that have, and yeah, each one's got its own taboos. Now, do we? You've got a lot of vegans in the pagan beliefs. You've got a lot of LGBT community in the pagan beliefs because paganism is pretty much open to all. There is no judgment in paganism. There's no heaven or hell. Um, most pagans believe in reincarnation. Um, we believe when you die. Some believe in what's called Summerland, and I guess it'd be the equivalent to the Christian version of heaven. You've got the Norse; they believe in Valhalla. Valhalla is the uh, place that warriors go when they die, and they drink with Odin, and they have the feast hall. um, and a lot of what you hear me saying, you'll probably see in movies. There's a lot of movies out there that take on pagan fact, and like in the movie Thor, where he goes to Valhalla and Odin's his father. It's all based on mythology, but for pagans, mythology isn't. It's not myth. It's real. The deities in mythology are alive. They're very much alive and well. And yeah, it is the cycle of life, is what we live by. Do we need to go to a building? No, we don't. For most, depending on what element you follow, you got ocean witches. They go to the ocean. They're completely at home at the ocean, in the water. I myself, I'm Earth. If I was ocean, I would have joined the Navy. That's why I joined the Army, because I'm right at home in the mountains, right at home in the woods. That's why when I was a child, I'd put my play clothes on and be out in the woods grounding. Now, some of the basics, um, and like I said, I gave you probably two of the best books you could read about basic pagans, and that's Scott Cunningham. But most pagans, they'll meditate. That's how they communicate. That's how they communicate with spirit. That's how they communicate with their spirit guides, things of that nature. That's how they learn. And then you have shielding. Shielding is another thought projection. It's where you basically envision with using your chakras. Chakras are the energy centers of your body, with the third eye being your primary visual chakra. And you'll envision, depending on what kind of shield you're trying to make, you'll envision like a white light that'll envelop your body into an orb, kind of like an orb around you, and that's your basic shield, and it protects you. Exactly. Um, And yeah, Finn just said earth, water there, and get them to a mountain stream, please, and thank you. And yeah, you know, every witch has their own element that they're tied to. You can essentially master all the elements. It takes years to accomplish, if you're even meant to. Where was I? Let's see. Yeah, okay, shielding. Then you also have, I think my favorite is the brick wall, and that's where you actually, with your mind's eye, you build a brick wall. You actually envision each brick being placed, and nothing gets through. Whether it's a spirit, whether it's a malevolent entity, whether it's someone astral projecting trying to get to you. You always need a shield, and that's how you protect yourself in a paranormal investigation as well. Is you should always be shielded before you go into a quote unquote haunted location. Um, Now grounding. The the people you find that have excessive energy and they talk a mile a minute and they just can't stop fidgeting, many of those people need grounding. And I'll encourage them to take their shoes and socks off, go out to the nearest tree, hang onto the tree with both hands, and envision all their excessive energy going from the top of their head and into the earth through the bottom of their feet. And they'll feel much more calm or much more at peace. And it's called grounding your negative or excessive energy. Um, Most pagans, when it comes to cleansings, we use sage. And my method, there's different methods you hear about, but my method of cleansing a location is to take white sage. Um, Sometimes I'll use white sage mixed with cedar, and you'll have the client open all the doors and windows. Oftentimes, we'll have the client do it because it means a lot more for the client to cleanse their own location. You'll open up all the doors and windows. You'll start from the center, and you'll smudge. Basically, you light your sage and build it up to where there's a lot of smoke, and you'll start from the center of the room and work your way out. And basically, start from one end, one room central, work your way out until the whole room is full of smoke. But you're basically pushing the energy out the windows and out the doors. And you go to the next room. Now, anytime you're cleansing, don't forget your mirrors. I usually use a salt water mix for mirrors, and I encourage salt water poured down your drains because many people forget about the drains. And that's how you cleanse your location. Very much pagan. Also very much Native American. Rosemary is good for demonic entities or malevolent entities, whichever your choice of calling them. Malevolent entities cannot be around rosemary. Very good for planting a rosemary plant outside your house or on your property. It keeps malevolence away. Lavender is good for calming. Valerian root tea is good for calming because valerian root you can get. I always encourage. If people want a good store to shop at, go to mountainroseherbs.com. They're based out of Oregon. They can get you if they don't have it, they can find it when it comes to herbs, and they're relatively cheap and they're very quick with shipping. So Mountain Rose Herbs is your best source if you need any kind of herbs or mortar and pestle, tea balls, that kind of thing. But let's see, valerian root is the natural root of Valium. I took that to. Oh God, yeah. Finn just said, yeah, the smell of valerian, it smells worse than bad feet. I took valerian to Iraq with me. I had here's how it went in Iraq, and here's how Forest Moon Grove got started. The first group I started was actually in Kitzingen, Germany. Now, I'd already done a little bit of political research on the pagan side, and back then, this would have been back in, I want to say 2001, and I got switched over from one company to the next, from Charlie Company to Bravo Company. And my first day, because they needed good NCOs, non-commissioned officers. So my first day in that company, the first sergeant, who's the senior non-commissioned officer in a company level, came out and said, if you are a pagan, if you're a Wiccan, or if you're a Satanist, you will not practice in my company area. But if you are a Christian, I will make sure you have plenty of time to go to the chapel. Yeah. Okay. So this is my first formation in this company. And like, really? I went straight to the training NCO and I said, I want every soldier in this company's roster that is registered as pagan, Wiccan, Druid, witch. I don't give a damn. If they are on your roster as being pagan, I want to know. And she's like, "Oh shit, you're pagan, aren't you, Sergeant Cooper?" Like, yeah, I am. And I mean, this is before Iraq. This is, like I said, back in '01. And so I got the list, and I went to all these soldiers that were on the list, and I said, "Look, what's going on? What happened? I'm identifying all of our pagans, and if you have issues, I need to know." And well, right off the top, I got a Wiccan saying, "Well, I went to the chaplain of the battalion and tried to tell him I was Wiccan, and he called me a Satanist." I was like, "Okay, I guess we need to go have a little chat with the chaplain." Well, I'm an E5. The chaplain's assistant was an E6, who thought her shit didn't stink. And yeah, she got put in her place real quick. Now, bear in mind, I was a nobody. I'm an E5. I'm a sergeant. I'm a truck mechanic. I'm a medic. I'm also the battalion safety NCO. Now, for our non-military that are going to be listening, the safety NCO is the one that my job in the battalion. Now, for a breakdown, usually a company has roughly 150, maybe 200 soldiers in it. There's usually about 5 or 6 companies in a battalion. So you're looking at a battalion size. A battalion's usually got right around 1,000 or so troops, anywhere between 800 to 1,000. So as a battalion safety NCO, I'm in charge of the safety training. Every company's got a motor pool. Every company's got vehicles. There's a whole lot of politics and regulations for each company to follow. I was OSHA inspection certified through the Army, put it that way. So I would go to all the motor pools and all the buildings and everything and do a full out OSHA inspection. And each company now has their own safety NCO and safety officer, which I was company level in every unit I was in after I guess 2000, 99, 2000 till 2010. And so being the battalion safety NCO, I'm already friends with the battalion XO and the battalion commander, the colonel. And I went and drank coffee with the XO, who's a major, all the time. And so I go out and I butted heads with the chaplain right off the bat. He's like, "Well, what is a Wiccan? What is a pagan?" And I had explained to him, what they were, because he played stupid with me. And my first confrontation actually with his little E6 chaplain assistant. She says, well, why do you need to see the chaplain? And I said, well, because he apparently has some confusion here with what a Wiccan is versus what a Satanist is. And I'm just here to talk to him. She goes, oh, so you're here to educate the chaplain. It's like, well, if he seems to think they're one and the same, then apparently I am. And, well, yeah, she didn't like that too well. But she dealt. So I went to the chaplain, and I finally got a hold of him, and I said, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start a pagan group in the 701st MSB. And we're going to have a pagan breakfast. Because if you can have a prayer breakfast once a month for your Christian soldiers, we're going to have a pagan breakfast where we can identify all the pagan soldiers. Oh, yeah, Finn, I actually had a Satanist in my group. He was one of the names that the training NCO gave me. And so we had a long chat. And because there weren't any other Satanists, you don't find a whole lot of Satanists that'll come out. We had Satanists in the cavalry when I was in the Cav, and they were awesome. Now, well, actually, Trippin, that's the thing. They do know about other religions. My battalion XO told me point blank, and we'll get to that because this story is far from done. And when it's all cut and dried, all officers that make the rank of major and above have to go to alternative religions class as part of their officer training. So for a chaplain to try to say he didn't know, he was full of shit. And he learned real quick. Because basically, he played the good guy for a second and said, yeah, okay, we'll set up a pagan breakfast. You find out the location. You find out the, get all the details together and let me know what they are, and I'll put that out at the chaplain's meeting. Okay, cool. Well, we happen to have a German restaurant on our base in Kitzingen. And I went and talked to the owner of this German restaurant. The German, the German was like, a pagan breakfast? Are you serious? Now that's cool. He goes, because we have the Christians in here having their prayer breakfast once a month, all the time. So it shouldn't be a big deal. 2 days later, I've got the date all, actually that day I've got the date set, the time set, and this chaplain was going to go put the word out, and it was all good. Really. 2 days later, I bump into the chaplain, and he says, I have some bad news. I'm like, oh, well, what's going on? I said, well, I can't endorse your pagan breakfast, your pagan breakfast, because, well, we were told we can't do Christian breakfast anymore, and it's been frowned upon, and we can't endorse it. It's like, well, that's too bad. So I was all pissed off, I was going to do it anyway, with or without the chaplain. But so I go to the XO, and he's like, what's going on? And I told him what the chaplain said. He's like, are you serious? He goes, I can pull out the calendar right now and show you that he's full of shit, because for the next 6 months, the chaplain's training calendar has been laid out, and he's got a prayer breakfast locked in for the next 6 months. He's like, I'll handle this. He's like, if he's lying, I'm going to slam his ass. I'm okay. So we had our pagan breakfast, and my chaplain wasn't there. But tell you what, there was 3 other chaplains that were higher than him that did show up. And when they saw that there was a good 20 families that were pagan that showed up at this pagan breakfast, they were quite, amazed. Because when it was all said and done, and even my chaplain was going, well, I only see 20 soldiers with dog tags that say pagan on them, but I see 1,000 dog tags that say no religious preference. Does that mean they're all pagan? It's like, well, I'm not going to say it does, but I'm going to say out of that 1,000, I bet you 900, at least 900 of them probably are. So then this is like November time frame. And I went to the colonel and I said, I would like permission to use the airfield and have an open, public Yule celebration on the airfield here on base for our new pagan group. He's like, okay, we'll run it by the chaplain, and I'll sign off on it. Well, here comes the chaplain and his little staff sergeant. And, the first thing the staff sergeant says was, we have an issue with their candles because they're going to burn candles out on the airfield, and we have a problem with that. I didn't have to say nothing because the colonel looked at her and said, what about the candles in your chapel? And she's, well, we never leave them unattended. I was like, well, now hold on a sec. I have a problem with that. And the colonel's like, go ahead, Sergeant Cooper. I said, well, for one, any pagan that's using candles, regardless of whether it's in a ritual or a spell or anything else we use, a pagan that has candles burning on their altar they're also never unattended. So your unattended candle thing is bullshit. If you can have candles in your chapel burning, I've gone into your chapel before and not seen anybody around, but seen candles burning. So, you know what? When it was said and done, the colonel even saw through their shit and said, "No, you guys can have your open Yule celebration," and we did, and it was awesome. And about January, February, I left. And that particular group in Kitzingen, Germany, was still going strong. And I went to Fort Lewis. And Fort Lewis is where I went to the 29th Signal Battalion. That's where I ran into problems, and I was in Balad, Iraq. And actually, Balad, Iraq is the time frame was 04, January 04 to January 05, and that was where the stoning happened. Talifar 05 to 06 is where the soldier was stepped over by the chaplain. Now you get to 2009, 2010, and rather than having good chaplains, you've got the Evangelical Association that flooded the chaplaincy corps with their little minions. Their whole goal was not to help soldiers. Their whole goal was to win souls for Christ. So, can we find pagan troops today? No. That's why Forest Moon Grove stays dormant until the day that we can start seeing soldiers come up and need help again. Now, Forest Moon Grove was started. You've never figured out the difference. Christians, well, you got Methodist, you got Lutheran, you've got Foursquare, you've got Evangelicals, and they all have their different views. Some believe in the Holy Spirit. Some don't believe in the Holy Spirit. Some believe Jesus was God's son. Some believe Jesus is God. And the list goes on. They all fit under the Judaism umbrella. Just like there's a pagan umbrella, there's a Christian umbrella. And they all, it's the same thing. Now, within the pagan umbrella, you've got, and we never did finish this discussion, but within the pagan umbrella, you've got Wicca. Like I said, Wicca was developed in about 1947 is when it came to America. It's very dogmatic. They believe in the god and the goddess, but they also believe the god and the goddess are all one energy. They're not, it's not, say, yeah, there you go. I'm sorry, it is Abrahamic, not Judaism. But now you've got the Roman, you've got the Celtics, you've got the Norse, you've got the Greek, you've got, and the list goes on. All the different pantheons that fall under the pagan umbrella. And so for the Norse, you've got Asatru, you've got Odinists, you've got, they're not Norse, but you've got the Druids. These are all different pagan belief systems that fall under the umbrella. Now, there's a saying, not all witches are wicked, but all Wiccans are witches. Now, you also have, and so that's like me, I'm a witch, but I'm not Wiccan. Now, the term witch, There is no warlock. Now, there are Norse tribes that still use the term warlock to mean a male Norse practitioner. But overall, when it comes to witches, we aren't warlocks. Warlock, by definition, means oath breaker. Back in, say, the 1700s, when witches' covens were secret because there was, persecution going on, the covens were secretive. The coven teachings were secretive. Most of them were actually oral, they weren't written down, other than what they call the Book of Shadows in some of them. So the Oathbreaker was the one that violated the code or the secrecy of the coven, and he was banned or kicked out for being an Oathbreaker. That's actually what warlock means, and back in that time era, that's what a warlock was. A witch is a witch. It doesn't really matter if you're male or female. So I get asked that a lot. I'm trying to think of all the questions that people that know nothing ask us. Do we do spells? Yes. Do we do rituals? Yes. Do we dance naked in the woods? Some people do. It's called skyclad, and it's where people, they believe to be one with the earth, they must have all earthly garments off. So they go what's called skyclad. They go dance naked in the woods under the full moon. Do witches fly on brooms? No, we don't. Um, you do have some people that jump off their roof with a broom, and well, they don't fly. Actually, that also comes from lucid dreaming in some cases, and it comes from peyote. It comes from drugs. It comes from hallucinogenics that they used back then, where they had the perception of flying. But no, they don't fly on a broom. Um, Now, the pointy hat, that is also symbolic of what they call the cone of power. Cone of power is achieved by chanting, by energy raising during a ritual. Basically, you envision the energy that you're raising on either a drum circle or things of that nature into a cone, and then it's released into the universe. And that's basically how you achieve spell work, ritual work, thanks to the deities, that kind of thing. And as I said before, we do have altars that we set up for certain deities. It's out of respect, and it's out of do we worship them? No, we don't. Our deities do not expect us to worship them. They get pissed off if you worship them. I'm just gonna be blunt about that. Morgan took damn good care of me in Iraq. If I was running out of coffee, I would say, "Look, I'm running out of coffee," and by God, by goddess, there'd be coffee in the mail that day. It was funny as hell. So we're packing up to go home. I've got my altar to Morgan. I pack it all up. I put it in my duffel bag. Get ready to go. Sitting down at a table drinking coffee, and one of our NCOs, he's Christian. So we're sitting there. Bear in mind, we're in a maintenance shop. That's where our Pagan group. That's where Desert Moon Grove met. And the door to this maintenance shop is a good 15 to 20 foot tall. It's big enough, the maintenance shop itself is big enough to get a 5-ton in, for us to work on them. And no wind, sunny day. Out of the blue, that door slammed shut. He's going, "What the hell is that? Coop, what was that?" Like, huh. Well, that's funny. He's like, "Dude, there's no wind." I'm like, "Nope." He's like, "Oh, do you know what that was?" I'm like, "Well, all I'm going to say is I packed up Morgan's altar, and she's gone." But, oh, damn. Okay. So we're sitting there in silence. Also, we hear this. And look over. We've been there a year. We've been through rainstorms, and it rains heavy in the desert. And well, that noise. Hey, Steve-O. Good to see you here. Steve-O, also, for all those of you who don't know, he's one of my pagan brothers in Australia. And glad you made it. So we're sitting in the shop, and you know, door slammed shut, and it starts dripping in our shop. He says, "Coop, we've been here a year, and we haven't had any leaking in this shop. Should we be worried?" It's like, well, like I told you, more guns left the building. We might want to leave now too. And we did. Now, what happened after we left? I mean, we got that whole year in the log. We were mortared every day, damn near every day, sometimes more than one time a day. And we never lost anybody. In my whole 20-year career, well, 19 and a half year career, I lost one soldier, and that was to suicide. And I didn't know that soldier that well because I was new. I just only been to that company for like 3 weeks. And when you've got 13 soldiers that are under you, and you've only been to the company 3 weeks, you don't get to find out all 13 of their personal lives and their issues. And so I got blamed for that. Like, well, you're a sergeant. You should have known he had. I was like, look, I've got 12 other soldiers. I don't even know all their problems yet. And yeah, so I pushed their blame right back on. But I gotta say, for 19 and a half years, 4 combat tours, I was highly protected. I was watched over. Morgan actually came to me in a meditation, and along with bear, an eagle, and a badger, which are my spirit guides. And I guess Bigfoot now, according to Dave. I've got Bigfoot watching over our place up here. Um, so while we're moving along here, let me get to another question, and we'll bounce back. And that's actually what I've been told, even during when it's Markham and I during S4 and during our normal nights. He's Christian, I'm pagan. We get along great, and our all of our shows, we have our primary topic, and we discuss our primary topic, but we discuss a whole bunch of other topics at the same time, but they all lead back at the end of the show. We've covered everything, and it all intertwines, and that's good to hear. Um, are there any known cases of pagan extremism? That was my next question here. And I'm going to say we do have extremists. Every belief system out there has extremists. Um, ISIS? We won't go into ISIS because that's a conspiracy theory, but it's not really. We all know the U.S. government created ISIS. We created ISIS by going to Iraq, for one, because that was an occupation. We didn't belong in Iraq. You got a whole bunch of pissed off Iraqis because we're occupying their country. Did we do anything good? I don't think we did. I don't think Saddam should have been killed to begin with. He was a dictator, sure, but was it our place to go remove him? Not really. Other than to make Bush some more billions. But anyway, so radicals. Every belief system has radicals. The Muslims, the Christians. We won't even list the number of militias and Christian conservative radicals there are that go out and kill in the name of God. The radical Islamists that kill in the name of Allah, which means God. Um, if you really want to look at it deep, Islam and Christianity walk parallel, hand in hand. If you take away all their nuts and bolts are the same, they believe in the same God. Um, Hindu. I don't know a whole lot about Hindu, although I've got Hindu friends. Um, every belief system's got radicals. We actually had a druid here local to us. Turns out he had mental health issues, but he actually tried. Oh, well, remind me, Trippin. We'll get to that here in a second. But this druid actually tried to run over um, a cop and said, "You protect and serve, so protect this." Uh, you do have radicals. Now we have what's called Circle Sanctuary. Selena Fox. Her name is Selena Fox. She runs Circle Sanctuary. I wouldn't call her radical, but she's in the news all the time, standing up for pagan beliefs here, pagan beliefs there. Um, you, you, I wouldn't call them radical per se, but they like being in the limelight. Your goal shouldn't be to be in the limelight. Your goal should be to protect and serve the earth. That's what the goal is, and to bring up our next generation in our beliefs so that they can carry it on. That's where I stand on that. Now, getting back to Iraq in Telfar, as I said earlier in the show, we met in my chew every night, 7 days a week, drank coffee. We had soldiers that lost their buddies, so we did healing rituals for them. We honored all of our Sabbats, um, things of that nature. And we noticed this group of people. There's like two or three of them, and they weren't American, but they'd walk through our little compound every night to go take a shower because they lived in our little housing area. And one night they actually came over. Well, they were from Turkey. They were Shiite, and they were Turkish special forces in Iraq. And you know what? They came to our group, our pagan group, every night after that for about 4 months until they went back to Turkey. And they introduced us to their replacements, who again came to our pagan group every night until they left, or actually until we left, because we left back then too. And yeah, you know what, Steve? We'll get to the VA Pentacle campaign because Forest Moon was a part of that as well. Took 9 years. Took 9 years before the VA finally recognized the Pentacle for deceased pagan veterans. Um, they had a symbol for atheists. It was the atom. They had 13 different symbols for the Christian faiths. Everything from the fish to the cross to a Bible to. But it took them 9 years and a whole bunch of red tape, a whole bunch of bullshit that we had to go through before they approved. If I die and I want Mickey Mouse on my damn headstone, I should be allowed to have Mickey Mouse on my veteran's headstone. But they wouldn't allow Pinnacle. And yeah, it was finally approved. And yeah, please, if you have questions in the chat room or a comment that needs to be addressed, by all means, put it in caps. But anyway, yeah, and that's why I say on some of the other shows that, yeah, we actually got treated better by Muslims than our own Christian soldiers who laughed because we were pagan. I got accused of proselytizing because I put Desert Moon Grove flyers up at the bus stops around the base. Not to proselytize, that should be obvious. But if you're a pagan troop coming onto our base, you knew where to meet. So they try to get me on proselytizing. Of course, that didn't work because even the chaplain said, no, I so the pagan troops can find out where a pagan meeting is. So, And I guess that's why I get irritated the most when I'm in a chat room and I get accused of being intolerant. You're going to call me intolerant. You know who's been intolerant to the pagan belief the most? So, yeah. And this show has been being led up to for quite a while. And the bottom line is, um, if you have questions, before you start jumping into the rumor mill, why don't you ask someone that is of that faith? And it's just like, wow. But anyway, every faith group has their own radicals. Look at the Vikings. The Vikings raped, pillaged, long time ago. But also look at the witch burnings. Look at the oh God, what's the name? It's getting late. Anyway, can a pagan use elements of spiritual healing from other religions so long as they are not invoking a specific deity? They may exercise a method but not name a god by name, for example. Well, actually, we have our own methods of spiritual healing, or physical healing for that matter. And um, we have what's called and you know what? Look at televised evangelicals with their laying on of hands. That is nothing more than energy healing. Um, so come on now. Energy is energy is energy. It doesn't matter what your faith is. It doesn't matter what your belief is. Everybody works with energy and everybody practices energy. So you don't have to invoke or call on a deity for healing. And that was pretty much what his question was getting to. How does someone become a pagan? Is there a ritual, a blessing, or equivalent to a baptism? Okay. Um, I am ordained legally ordained pagan clergy. I'm not a high priest. I don't claim to be a high priest. I don't like labels per se. But I did get ordained through ULC, like all the pagans do, Universal Life Church in Modesto, California. You go online, you fill out a form, and it's legal in most states, and it's free because they believe everybody was ordained at birth. And so I've done several hand fasting. I've done several weddings, um, crossing overs. I've done, but what I like about it is I can actually do hospital visitation. It gives me legal status to go visit a pagan in the hospital if I need to. And it doesn't matter if it's visiting hours. I go up and say I'm their clergy. I can walk right in. Um, and yeah, you're absolutely right, Steve. Energy comes from nature, comes from Earth. And that's what elementals are. They're guardians of the elements. Um, and if you haven't seen my elemental pictures, oh my God, you got to see my. The elemental pictures. They show themselves in Iraq when we were closing our circle, and when we bid them farewell. I don't believe in demanding that they go. That's disrespectful. I also don't believe in invoking or calling them down like so many do, because I see that as disrespectful. I thank them for coming, and come anytime. And they showed themselves, all four elements. Um, but then you got tree. Okay, talk about fairies for a second. You got dryads, which are the guardians of the trees. Every plant has its own fairy, which is basically a guardian of that plant. You got sprites. You've got, oh God, there's books written about it. There's so many different fairy types. I also see dragonflies as a very good. If you see dragonflies that are hanging around you, that's usually a fairy sign or a fairy symbol. We did a protection rite in Kuwait. Our battalion was about to do a 3-day convoy um, across Kuwait and across Iraq. And at this point in time, this is back in January of '04, and we knew that the insurgents, as they call them, had put piano wire across the highways, and it was meant to cut the gunner's head off. So what we did, we took steel poles, like T-posts, and we welded them to the brush guards of our Humvees, of our 5 tons, of all our vehicles, so that as you're driving along, your pole, your pole, cuts the piano wire before it gets to the gunner's head. Well, they're also dropping grenades and explosives off overpasses. So me and a couple others, this is before we actually started up Desert Moon Grove, we got together and we decided to do a protective rite over the convoy. And we sat with candles and we blessed the whole convoy, all the vehicles. And we drove 3 days. Now, well, it's funny. The next morning after we did this protective rite, I get woken up. Sergeant Cooper, you gotta come outside. I'm like, well, what's going on? Like, I don't know how to explain it. You gotta come outside. I don't know what you did last night, but oh my God. And I step outside, and I mean, as far as the eye can see, there were millions of dragonflies, all flying in the same direction, and they were all flying towards Iraq. Now, you can take that as a migratory pattern. You can take that as they were, moving from winter's coming or whatever the case is. They're moving from this. No, I take that as a sign. You don't get a million dragonflies all moving into Iraq at the same time, especially when you see a dragonfly as a sign of a warrior of the fairies. We drove 3 days. The first night we stopped. We slept on the hoods of our trucks, and we heard explosions in the background. We heard firefights and whatnot. That was our first welcome to Iraq. Did any of our people get shot at? No. Did anything happen in our convoy the whole 3 days? No. No, I take it as our rights worked. There was another time in Blood we we had internet because we were a signal unit, so I had my own phone and I had my own internet. Exactly. But do you think they believe that? No, of course they don't. That's just quinky-dink. I don't believe in coincidence. Another thing we did about mid-tour, we got tired of being bombed and having mortars drop on us and firefights and all the other shit. So we actually got online and we, for about a week beforehand, I put out a call on Witchvox. Gotta love Witchvox, especially when you want to get word out to a lot of people fast. Now you got Facebook. This is long before Facebook, though. Back in '04. I wanted to issue out a call for peace, at least for one day. And we coordinated time zones, and we wanted every pagan, every witch, every druid, didn't matter, to all think of peace and face in the direction of Iraq, whatever wherever you're at. And we had a soldier that went to each of the quarters or each of the directions on our base at the same time. And I tell you what, for the first time in our whole year we were there, not one shot was fired across Iraq. Not one mortar was dropped in all of Iraq. That was the quietest day of Iraq. Now, did we run around? No, look what we did. No, of course not. So no, but to us, our group of 100 soldiers, we knew it worked, and we had no doubts the strength of what a spell or a ritual could do. So, how does someone become a pagan? Well, again, we don't go looking for people. If you're not pagan, be happy with who you are. Be happy with what your faith is. Now, if you're not happy with what your faith is, do your own homework, do your own research, find out what faith you're drawn to, and if it happens to be a pagan tradition, then come talk to me. But I'm not going to tell you about it. I want you to do your own homework. And usually, if I have someone that does come to me, I'll say, look, here's what you, and I've got at least 5 people right now that are, and I tell them, look, I want you to go on Amazon. I want you to look up Scott Cunningham. Yeah, and like Finn just said, which section of the pagan umbrella are you looking to join? I don't consider myself a teacher. I'm a mentor. I'm even if I know or can see by your description of which area you might fall into, I usually don't tell them. I usually push them in the direction where to find the information for themselves. I'm here to answer questions as they go, by any means. But usually, and like I said, I've got 5 people right now that I send them to Amazon and look up Scott Cunningham or those 2 books. I want you to read them. You read them. When you're done, right as you're going through the book and doing the exercises, whatever, write down your questions. When you're done with the books, then we'll talk. And the other question I get asked is, how do I find out who my deity is? You ask them. If you're meant to know, then they will show themselves. And usually it's in a dream. Usually it's in a symbol. For example, Morrigan is symbolized by a red cow, a black dog, and crows or ravens. That's the biggest symbols of Morrigan's presence. But every deity, Hecate, for example, um, she's common with the owl. And that's why I know for some of you that listen to Spaced Out Radio and know Joe Algier, he talks about the owls in his house. Um, yeah, it could be gray aliens. Has a very strong chance of that in his case. But it could also be a spirit guide, an owl. And that's Hecate. But every deity out there has their own symbolisms. So I tell them to meditate and ask the universe, basically, who my deity is. They will show themselves, usually either through symbolism or in a dream. And you usually ask right before you're going to go to sleep, as you're getting in bed, say, would you please show yourself to me? And they will. That's usually how you find out who your deity is. You can. I completely agree. Finn just said it can't be talked about enough, but you can just pick a deity too. And usually, and I'm going to add to that, Finn, in that usually the deity you picked out, not taking away from what you're saying whatsoever, but usually the deity you picked out planted the thought in your head, and that's how you picked out that particular deity. Especially like with Odin. If you are, you got Odin, you got Thor, um, right, and they, like I said, they usually come to you in dreams, but usually that thought of that particular deity didn't just magically plant itself in your head. Um, that deity told you, "Hey, look up, look me up, look up Odin," and it whispers, "Odin," you know. So I don't believe in quinky per se. I think the best thing you can do too is look up your own personal culture. Like my family heritage comes from England and Scotland. Do I have any Scottish deities? No. I'm drawn to Morrigan. Morrigan's worked with me for over 20, well, I guess not quite 20. When I went to Iraq, I didn't have a deity per se in Somalia. Yeah, I was in Somalia in '93. I was shot at. I had a sniper round go within inches of my waist. Um, we had explosives in the middle of the road as we're driving down the road. I couldn't tell you how many times I probably came close to death and didn't even know it. I was highly protected. By who? Back then, probably Morgan. Did I know? No. I had no clue. I was doing research, not on deities though. I was more studying astrology and tarot and some of the magical arts. I didn't really start studying. Oh God, let's see. 1995 is when I picked up Scott Cunningham's Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner. That's when I got my first actual nut and bolt pagan book. So, and I'm gonna let you listen to some music real quick. I'm gonna go roll a cigarette, and then we'll keep on talking. Okay, yeah, it's a very informal show. It's not, our shows usually ain't run like this, but again, I felt this show had to be done. So some will see this as as an unprofessional show, but the message is getting out there, and that's the main point that I wanted to bring up tonight. Now, how does someone become a pagan? Usually they're drawn to the earth. They're drawn to, they find someone that's pagan, and they like who they are. They like what their belief is. And, you know, is there a ritual or a blessing? Okay, some, some of the Wiccans out there believe in the year and a day. And that's where you get into the degrees, because a lot of covens believe in the degree program. And that's where they become my first degree high priest, a second degree high priest, and it's all based on a year and a day training. So, by all means, then you have some that believe in dedicating themselves to their particular deity. You got baby blessings. We do baby blessings. They're called wickenings. So some of it's similar. I would agree with that. Now, even if I'm not pagan but believe in freedom of all faith, what can I do to ensure that pagans enjoy the same liberties and rights as Christians, Muslims, and Jews? So, those are all excellent questions, Robert. And he's going to be listening to the show later, probably later today at some point, which is why he threw the questions out there. He's asleep because he didn't feel good. Yes, I am, Steve-O. I've done probably about 5 different ham fastings, and usually, what I'll do is I'll have them pick out the ritual that they like. I'll look it over. I'll memorize the best I can, and I'll perform it. But yeah, I am legally ordained to perform ham fastings. And for those listening that don't know what a ham fasting is, it's basically it's a legal marriage. It can be recognized as a legal marriage, but it's basically a joining together and before your deities. That's what a ham fasting is. And many pagans will do a year and a day ham fasting, and that's where they're together. It's kind of like a trial period where they're together for a year and a day, and then they'll tie the knot, so to speak. Um, And then the hand parting is like a divorcing, where if they aren't compatible, you'll do a hand parting and then you'll unbind. Um, one pagan tradition is the tying together of the wrists with a cord, and then you'll jump the broom. Jumping the broom is also an African American tradition from, I believe, back in the 1800s. Don't quote me on that, but it's also an African American tradition, as well as a pagan, of jumping the broom. So let's see what else we've got. Um, let's see, we've covered deities. We've covered, and like I said, basically look at your own heritage and look at the deities of that particular heritage. Um, I come from Scottish and English ancestry, but Morrigan came to me, as well as Carinos came to me. When they come to you, that's when you start studying and you start communicating with them all the time. And that's how you learn, that's how you grow, that's how you get stronger in your spirituality. Um, as far as what can people do to, if you, okay, so if you're another faith and you see a pagan being discriminated against, and you're not afraid of putting your own faith out there, then put your foot down. As in the case of one pagan that got fired from the dental clinic on a military installation she was working at. It was dominantly Christian, and that's why she got fired, because she was pagan. And even the non Christians were afraid that they were going to get fired if they stood up for her. And well, if you want religious freedom, then you should step up for everybody. And that's where I see that. Do we have any questions in the chat room before we go ahead and start wrapping this up? Let's see, we're actually hitting a 2 hour mark. That's kind of cool. We actually did go 2 hours. What's the future of paganism? I see actually more and more people turning to paganism in whatever tradition, and I think it's cool. But I also look at motive. Why? Are you actually drawn to paganism, or do you think it's cool? We went to Pagan Pride back in October, and we had our Forest Moon booth up. We actually met a pagan chaplain assistant at Fort Lewis that we will be working with as far as helping out pagan troops. So that is our next mission besides the paranormal side. As far as getting them the DRGL endorsement they need to run a pagan group in a deployed combat zone, if they need supplies. And getting to that real quick. Okay, so Forest Moon Grove was our civilian network. And how you doing, Andy? It is, Finn, and I like that. Reconstructionism actually shows growth. It shows growth and it shows development. But it stays, as long as it stays to its pagan roots and doesn't, branch out too much. That's the main thing. That's what I see there. Now, as far as so we got to Blot, and basically the first thing I did is I went to the chaplain on the Blot Air Base, and I asked him, "So is there a pagan group here on base?" And he looked at me like, well, I was nuts. And he said, "Well, I don't think so." It's like, first thing you need to have an endorsement. It's like, I already know what the process is. And, um, yeah, just listen to the archive, Andy, and you'll get caught right up. Um, so, when it's all said and done, like I said earlier on in the show, that originally I'd planned for us to have pagan coffee discussion like once a week. Well, once troops started finding out there's a pagan group, they just came to my shop every night, and it became a nightly thing. And whether it was a Sabbath we were honoring, whether it was a soldier that was sick and needed healing, or whether it was a soldier that lost their comrades in a convoy, we did what we had to do. We had study groups in the meantime. We learned from each other, and that was what was cool about having a pagan group versus just a Wiccan group or just a Druid group. You learn from a real Druid. You learn from a real Asatru, a real Norse, about what their particular faith or tradition was. And you all went away after the year more educated. Um, so I took basic candles, I took basic incense, I took basic herbs, I took the library I had. But again, I saw if we met every night, it was going to be a long year. So again, I went on Witchbox and I put out the word under global listings that, look, we're pagan soldiers, we're in Iraq, we have a group, we need supplies. Dude, I'll tell you what. Um, it's one thing to be a mainstream religion. You have a chaplain, you have a chapel, you have, I don't know, thousands of Christians, for example, here in America, that would just jump on the chance to help a Christian soldier out. Same thing with the pagan community. I had pagan stores, I had pagan authors, I had covens, I had pagan organizations. We were stocked for both years I was in Iraq, whether it was Blood. Telefar got even bigger because I had Blackmore Night, the music group, that sent us 2 cases of their CDs. I had DJ Conway sending books. I had Oberon Zell sending us books. I had Isaac Bonowitz, when he was alive, sent us autographed books. I had, and I'll say their names, I had Serpent's Kiss, a pagan shop out of California, sent us packages. And then it got really frustrating because this is the 0506 time frame, and I had the Iraqis got smart and they started targeting our mail, and we had convoys of our mail getting blown up. So I don't know if some of those packages that were sent for us got blown up. We were pretty well set though, and you can, as I said before, you can go in the Forest Moon Grove group, and my whole library of pictures from Iraq from both tours is in there, as well as the Forest Moon Grove pictures of rites and rituals we've done here. We've done rituals to Morrigan for protection of troops. We've done at Pagan Pride events over the years, things like that. So those pictures are in there. Um, but what's the future hold? It's going to be real curious what happens tomorrow night, for example. Tomorrow night we have a new president getting elected in. Based on how radical they are in their own belief system, it is going to depend a lot on how open and accepted paganism is in general. Because you see how it is now. Imagine if one of the radicals gets into office. It's going to get worse. So a lot of that's going to depend on that. Does it affect most of us? Not really, because we already have our own pagan communities. So let's see. We got any more questions out there? Because I'm about to wrap it up, and if questions come up, then we'll address them in S4 on Sunday night. And like I said, Andy, go ahead and start from the beginning. And if you have any questions or issues that come up, by all means, that can be reached right on Facebook, right on Forest Moon Grove or Forest Moon Paranormal. So getting to the paranormal side real quick, like I said earlier in the show, as pagans, um, we live and recognize the paranormal as a day-to-day thing, and we see it more as a crisis. And you actually have pagans that question how paranormal is a pagan issue, because as pagans we know how to deal with spirits already. So when you have an actual pagan that's having a paranormal issue, how come they can't handle it themselves? And I get asked that a lot too. Well, if they're new to their faith, then they don't necessarily know how to handle it. So, you know, I was on a paranormal panel here at Pagan Pride here this year, and it was a good panel. I'll give them that. Um, but there's a lot to be learned in both fields, and most of us see it as a crisis issue, and not let's go out and prove there's ghosts. Let's go out there and prove there's malevolent entities. Let's go out and prove there's Bigfoot. We already know those things exist, so why do we need to prove it? And that's where you see the difference between a pagan paranormal group and just a non-pagan paranormal group. We don't do it for the thrill of it. We do it for the helping of the people. That's Now on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you for listening, guys. And you got any questions? You know how to reach me.